And when did
It'll be there
Bowie
forever.
die? Which day?
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
God. Yeah, okay. Showtime.
Greetings and salutations, everyone, and happy 2016. Man, we got a studio full of folks here today. You have tuned in to Dr. Judy, WTF, which of course is What the Freud. I am your host, Walt Lusk, and in studio we have some amazing ladies in the house. We've got Dr. Judy Rosenberg as usual, and Coco Accom, who is an entrepreneur extraordinaire and musician and has experienced the issue we're going to talk about today on the show. And the show we're dealing with today is cancer. We thought in relation to the fact that things happen in threes, even though there was a fourth one, Natalie Cole died. And then, of course, David Bowie. This morning it was Alan Rickman. And, of course, then Celine Dion's husband passed today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's all in threes, yeah.
Okay.
And David Bowie actually had liver cancer and also heart issues. And he gave it his all until the end. And he wanted to be remembered, and Coco can talk about that. He wanted to be remembered as a performer because really his life was art. And what's interesting is he was an amazing, amazing musician. He had one of the top 10 musicians in England. He had a net worth of well over $230 million. And he had he sold 7 million copies of Let's Dance, which was his first album that really put him on the charts. 140 million worldwide in record sales, and one of the top 10 biggest selling. So he's huge. He was an actor. And of course, worked in plays, and of course, a musician. So we want to kind of dedicate the show to David Bowie. And as you folks know, if you listen to us, we do Shrink That Tune, and at the end, we will be shrinking one of David Bowie's more recent and probably his last song. So stay tuned for that. And cancer is very interesting. When I was dealing with a client this week, and the husband was dealing with it, and he said that she has cancer. Cancer does not have her.
Interesting.
And I thought that was a very, very refreshing perspective on it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because cancer is one of the few illnesses that impacts two people. It impacts the individual with cancer and the caregiver, and that's why next week we're going to touch on the caregiving because because it's very consuming. If you have chemotherapy, you have to have someone take you, and recuperation and such, which we'll touch on. You can pick us up on iTunes and Stitcher, and here at ubnradionetwork.com. And this is a call-in show. So if you have an experience either with cancer, have an issue or a challenge, or you want to share it and get on the couch with Dr. Judy with your emotional ouch, you can call us at 323-843-2826. That's 323-843-2826.
So today, by the way, welcome, Coco. I'm very
so
happy
much.
to have you here. And I know that you have lost family members to cancer.
Yes, I have. I lost my father, my late father,
Okay.
and my oldest sister as well. And I currently have another sister that's actually going through the whole cancer battle at the moment.
So you have been through it, and you've watched their relationship to what they're going through.
I've seen them like deteriorate from being very healthy beings to sort of just deteriorating into nothing, and it's just the most heart-wrenching, saddest thing to watch because you feel powerless because there's nothing you can do about it. There's obviously the scientific herbal way. There's so many different ways treatments you can use for it, and some people choose like the Steve Jobs alternative, which I guess wasn't the best route for him.
Didn't he do alternative medicine?
Yeah,
right?
he did he went the holistic way. Like I think he went to India and all that.
Okay.
He actually went to Tennessee and had a liver transplant. He moved to Tennessee because his chances of getting a liver transplant were the highest there, and that's where he got his liver transplant, which didn't work out for him.
And it's really confusing because there's so many alternatives. They have people who have this diagnosis can take a lot of different pathways. So they can take the alternative medicine pathway. And I remember when my father was dying of pancreatic cancer, we took the macrobiotic pathway, and it really did help to slow down the metastasis.
Yes.
Ultimately, he gave up the diet because, he's Hungarian, Jewish, likes to eat. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to go, I'm just like, give me the cake, give me the steak, give me the wine.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, sugar is death for cancer. I mean,
it feeds the cancer.
It feeds the cancer.
Right.
I mean, if you have cancer and you're starving for a bowl of ice cream, that's your cancer saying, feed me, feed me, feed me.
Right, and in my father's case, he had pancreatic cancer, so I'll never forget how many times my mother had to bring him lemonade, and he'd just say, put more sugar in it, put more sugar in it, put more sugar in it. But tonight we're going to talk about the psychological impact of cancer, because you can imagine it's hard enough to just live in the world, right, without adding the layer of you've got cancer to a person's life. So,
as one article stated, to have cancer is to change forever.
I also think having cancer is like, being a foreigner and you show up in the, it's a whole new landscape. It's like a whole new country and you can't even speak the language.
Yes.
And it's like, how do you deal with it? I can't speak the language. I don't know where I am. So it's just sort of like, it's like a boomerang and it just hits you and you just don't know which way to go.
It's not like we go to school and we're trained for these kinds of things, right?
Not.
I mean, even in combat, we get combat training, but then a person diagnosed with cancer is in combat because he or she is in combat against these cells gone wild, taking over the body.
And I think the hardest thing is as well once the person's in that initial shock, they then feel either defenseless or helpless, like they want to just end it or they want to fight for their lives. You get one of the, different types of reactions with this. And in these cases, I think it's important, that the victims have help because sometimes they're just so confused, discombobulated. They don't know what to do. They can't think straight. And they need a friend or someone to hold their hand because,
absolutely,
because they can't function normally, their lives their walls are ending. It's like, which way do I turn? So I think that's important to show support to whoever is going through.
One gentleman said here that he had incurable cancer, and it was his struggle against the unstoppable.
Wow.
And that's just amazing. And so he would just gather as much information as he could, and he had reams and reams and reams of it. And he finally said that to be set free, he needed to drop the burden of the struggle, and just enjoy each day with his family, with his grandkids, and just live in the present as opposed to sitting here trying to struggle because it was too much. He had a lot of support, but he gave it all he could, and then he wasn't giving up. He was just saying, hey, it's unstoppable. I'm just going to have to admit it and acknowledge it and live with it.
And Dr. Judy, what do you think of being open to information? Because obviously some people can shut down, and shutting down is obviously not a positive thing. How do you think,
I was just thinking about the word denial, and so you're asking that question. It was just on my mind. People will go into denial, and sometimes denial is not a bad thing because you can imagine somebody giving you this diagnosis and you go into a form of shock. So Elizabeth Kubler Ross talks about this. She was a doctor who is no longer alive, and she worked with cancer patients, and she also went into the other aspect of death and dying and going through the tunnel. So she went quite far into the whole death and dying experience. But she outlined a process that people go through when they're diagnosed with cancer, and one of the first aspects of the process is denial. So no, I don't. They're mistaken. Let's get 3 other opinions, and the opinions come back with the same diagnosis. Right. So some people just really don't want to deal with what your friend did, which was research it and fight it.
He researched
and
it
so
to
on.
death, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they have guilt What did I do to deserve getting cancer? I mean,
Absolutely.
is it my attitude, which we're going to talk about? Is it my
Right.
personality?
Right.
Is it something I did in my previous life or something? And they have a lot of guilt as to, oh my goodness, how did I get this?
I have something to say about that actually,
Okay.
but I don't know if it's just a biased or one-sided opinion.
Go for it.
I feel that a lot of people that they get cancer or ridden with cancer, like my father, he was just a warrior. So there's a lot of people that are just such warriors. Like my
Yes.
sister was always a warrior. She'd be like,
Yes.
Dr. Judy, are you okay? Always faffing about this and that and
Okay.
constantly stressing. And I find that there's a high percentage in people that stress so much and they're constantly worrying about everything, trying to micromanage everything. They seem to be more susceptible to it as well.
Well,
I
we're
don't
gonna
know.
you know what
We're gonna talk
we'll-
about that.
We'll touch on that in a
Yeah.
quick second. What I wanted to do first is talk a little about statistics. So I always like to do the stats. So as of 2015, almost 7 million people had new cases of cancer here in the United States alone, and almost 600,000 will die from the disease. 40% of men and women will be diagnosed with cancer sometime in their life.
How
And
many? Did you
40%.
40%
Yeah.
of all people will be diagnosed.
40%. And
What
that's
is
down.
in the air? What is in the water? What is in
The
our
Oh my
food.
goodness!
What is in our
No,
consciousness?
absolutely.
Right.
Okay, so
And money spent in U.S. dollars right now is in the area of about $140 billion per year right
Jeez.
now worldwide.
Wow.
And it's the
Okay.
leading cause of death worldwide as of 2012. So I mean, it's a big deal.
Well, the mind and the body are interconnected. It's as simple as this. If I tell you to imagine a lemon, okay, I'm cutting open a lemon and I'm squeezing the lemon in your mouth, under your tongue, you tell me what's happening to your saliva level.
Exactly, in your taste buds, it just changes
It's going
everything.
to
But
increase.
what's actually happening? If
It's
I'm
increasing.
asking you to imagine this lemon being squeezed under your tongue, what's happening in your mouth?
Yeah,
Right.
it's definitely gonna
You're going to get more.
increase.
Your saliva is increasing.
Yeah, it's not theoretical. It's not like, it could increase or I can imagine that it increases.
No,
It's actually, I can feel it in my mouth. It's actually increasing. And I'm the one putting out this imaginary scenario, right? So there's no lemon, correct? I didn't do anything to any of you guys,
And there is
right?
no spoon either.
And even to myself. And yet there is a physiological reaction to a mental idea.
Right.
Okay, so that to me is a really great example of how the mind and body are interconnected.
Well, it's
Okay,
interesting.
so-
There's an article that was, is there a cancer-prone personality, Coco? And they did 20 years ago. They did a study, and then they reevaluated it. And basically, the standard stuff is depression, anger, hostility, take more prone to illness and disease versus positive attitudes like hope, optimism, and happiness. But the cancer-prone personality types are you repress both the positive and the negative emotions. You show anger and resentment and hostility. Take extra duties and responsibilities even when it may cause stress. React adversely and don't cope with life changes very well. Negative and pessimistic, easily depressed and has feelings of hopelessness, worries a lot, and then a need for approval. Those are the cancer-prone, supposed cancer-prone personality types. The positive ones, the cancer-resistant ones, express of emotions in a positive and constructive way, controls anger and resolves anger issues positively, knows when to say no, copes with stress very well and feels in control of situations. Good luck there. Optimistic and hopeful, do not become easily depressed, maintain social support in networks, doesn't worry, and lastly, likes to please but doesn't seek approval from emotional crutch. And the bottom line in all this is, it didn't make any difference.
It didn't make any
No.
difference. What didn't make any difference?
Whether you had a cancer-prone personality or a cancer-resistant personality.
You mean the statistics were the
Statistics,
same across
identical.
board? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So which leads us to think maybe it comes from an outside
Although there were
source or
yeah.
genetically
Wow.
predisposed.
Although there were some exceptions.
and-
If you meditated, that helped, guided imagery.
Okay.
If you had a very strong support network, and if you went through stress management and relaxation techniques, that seemed to help.
Okay, so this show is about healing human disconnect. So it's no surprise to me that if you have a really strong support system and you feel connected, what's the most powerful healing force on the planet?
Unconditional love.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so that if you're surrounded by people who care about you and you're not taking that burden upon yourself, then physiologically something's going to go on where your body relaxes, where the stress hormones don't hit the roof, where you're kind of sharing the burden of your dis-ease and your disease with the family members, which you are familiar with because you were one of those family members that got the hit too. Okay.
Absolutely.
So so tell me what you. Okay, here's one of my thoughts is that I talk a lot about negative core beliefs and I talk a lot about the wounds of childhood. So
From the mind map perspective.
from the mind map perspective, and so we'll get that up in a minute. But what I want to say about that is that when we're hit with such a profound disease, it is going to definitely cause emotional chaos in our lives. It's definitely going to hit on our negative core beliefs. It's definitely going to impact us at the very core of our being. So what happens then is that we will have different reactions depending on how solid we are foundationally. If we have parents that created a nice solid foundational emotional core within us, then we'll have more resilience. We'll be able to cope better with anything that hits us, including cancer, which is about the top of the threatening diseases that we know of.
Exactly. Well, my sister, my younger sister, when she got it, she was living a bit of a reckless life, and because I guess I come from a bit of a dysfunctional family like the rest of us.
There's no such thing as a perfect family.
The Simpsons, yeah. And there's various reactions. I come from a family of 10. I'm in the middle. So my younger sister got cancer recently, and she's in recovery and she's doing really well, actually. I rang my mom up in South Africa and she said, "Oh my Lord, you couldn't have called it a better time because your sister just called my other sister that's become an ordained priest/realtor, and she's a very a Bible bashing, happy clappy Jesus everything, which is good for her." So my sister with cancer rang her up and she said, "Mom, everything's good, I'm recovering, I'm almost there, the treatments are working, I'm being responsive," and real positive attitude, and I'm all happy about that.
Yeah.
So I sent my sister an email, the other one, and I said, I haven't heard from my mom because she's had 2 little scares the past month and almost died as well. Then my sister, that's a priest, the pastor calls up my mom and says, "Oh, I just spoke to Candy and you know that she has cancer and we have to find a burial plot for her, and who's flying the body, to the city that we're from, and who's paying, and what's the insurance like, and she's dying and all this." But my sister that has cancer just spoke with my mom saying, "Hey, everything's great, I'm recovering, thanks for the support." So my mom's an older woman and she's freaking out, her blood pressure's hitting the roof. So my sister that's supposed to be leaving God and be a child of light is telling my mom and everyone else that we're supposed to be digging a hole already in the grave, and my sisters are recovering. So when you talk about, having that emotional support and having that firm, rooted upbringing where, you're just solid and you can deal with it in a positive way.
Yes.
I said to my sister, my mom, I just think that as much as she portrays to be all about God, that she's like a wolf in sheep's clothes, because, we're supposed to be supporting my sister, saying, "You know what, we're here for you, we love you,
not
we care
digging
you."
the hole, right?
Yes, my sister almost 100% recovered, telling her, "We've got to dig the hole, darling, and we've got to choose the plot." And I was just like...
And what do you want on your headstone?
I was just like shocked, like that she's supposed to be a priest acting in this manner.
Don't you notice that when big things happen, when trauma happens, people's personalities show up in bigger ways and more profound ways?
Absolutely.
Is that the next
and
article?
This is an article that actually Dr. Judy found for some goofy reason. Psychological stress.
Because I'm goofy, that's why.
Yeah, this is true. Psychological stress and cancer. So we got 5 things to address in this. And what is psychological stress? Well, basically it's stuff that puts you in distress, right? And if you are trying to manage and control the changes due to cancer, you might hail some stress. So it's the question of and it obviously reduces the quality of life of folks that have cancer, or anybody for that matter. And we've done previous shows on it. The second is, how does the body respond during stress? And this can actually be for anything, let alone cancer. But an intense and long-term, i.e. chronic stress, has digestive problems, fertility problems, urinary problems, weakened immune system, and of course sleeping issues. So it could also impact your immune system, and you could get the flu, a common cold, headache, or become more depressed. So that's again probably where a support group comes in. Can psychological stress cause cancer is the third one. The evidence is weak, although what's interesting is it may lead to behaviors, which you mentioned, Coco, that will cause you to have more cancer. Smoking, drinking, and overeating, which may increase your chances of having cancer, but isn't, in and of itself isn't cancerous causing.
So it's the defense mechanisms, actually, that break you down, which I talk about a lot. As a matter of fact, if you put up panel number 5, I want to talk about that.
Those of you that are listening to this show, you can go to drjudywtf.com and you can pull up the mind map. There's the mind map, and panel 5 is right there.
So anyway, just a little about the mind map. It's a causal model, meaning that everything that begins to exist has a cause, including our symptoms, emotional and otherwise. So if you look at the top row of the mind map, it's about the wounds of childhood, how we react to them, and how they encode. And then the middle section is how we then fall into chaos as a result of being stressed and activated or triggered by life. And then the middle panel, which is up now, looks like a bunch of round circles, and I call those our defense mechanisms, okay? So what happens is, in the case of cells, let's talk about cell membranes. Our cell membranes, which panel 5 came from my biology model, okay, is kind of like a cell, and the cell either will have a permeable membrane, a semi-permeable membrane, or a non-permeable membrane. Okay, so psychologically, if you're non-permeable, guess what that means?
I guess it doesn't affect you as much, right?
Right, you're shut down, right?
Nothing, very little's passing through.
Nothing comes in.
Yeah,
nothing
passing
comes
through.
in. And if you're permeable, everything comes through. So we've talked about different personality types. Some people are really shut down because they're paranoid. They've been too violated, so they build a shell. And other people are super permeable because they have no boundaries, so they just let the whole circus in, okay? And have a party on top of it, okay? And then other people know how to manage their boundaries. They're semi-permeable, so they know how to recognize, so here's the good one, here's the bad one, here's the good food, here's the bad food, and regulate themselves. And the reason people know how to do that is because, back to the cause, back to panel 1, if our parents regulated us, okay, if we had parents that breastfed us, nurtured us, eye contacted us, skin contacted us, had a stability. If daddy was in the picture nurturing mom, then we have a stable family structure. And then the baby can learn how to self-soothe because mom self-soothes the baby. Okay, so the baby internalizes.
And being soothed by dad.
Right, and mom's supported by dad. So all this trickle-down stuff, and I know you're one of 10, right? Okay, so imagine how much everybody got, okay? I'm imagining that it's hard to have 10 children and attend to 10 children. So, okay, so going back to cancer in this biology model, okay, so cancer is these cells gone awry, right?
Right.
They're kind of crazy. They're doing their own thing. Okay, so why are they doing their own thing? Because some kind of a misinformation infiltrated in. It infiltrated in, and it messed up the coding. So in a way, I liken psychopathology to that mechanism as well. It's kind of like we become psycho because we've got this psychovirus, like this kind of like a mental cancer, so to speak, infiltrating in. So to me, what's really interesting is that the body and the mind are kind of modeling in the same way, aren't they?
I think
Absolutely.
the cells are replicating as well,
Yes.
sporadically, you know,
Yes.
out of.
Yes, and not only
All
that, right, I see a lot of parallels between the multi-generational transmission process of pathology and then the multi-generational transmission process of genetics, including passing on I forgot the pronunciation, the Baroka something gene that a lot of women have to monitor because if they are carriers of this gene, they have a higher propensity for breast cancer and so on and so forth, and then they're recommended to get very aggressive about treatment, including mastectomy and so on.
The multi-generational thing.
Right. So there's this parallel between our physicality and our psychology, and it's no wonder because we're just patterning. So what makes these cells go crazy? Okay, maybe stress, maybe lack of love, support, maybe poor diet. Okay,
Wow, it's just
maybe combination of all of the above. And then our defense mechanisms, because panel 5, these round orbs, we're trying to defend. Okay, so let's say we're not feeling well. Let's say we're depressed. So we're going to try to defend against these horrible feelings of suppression. Speaking of your article, Walt, right?
Yes.
The suppressed personality, the repressed personality.
Well,
Okay.
here's the fourth one.
So,
is
yeah.
psychological stress affect people who have, does psychological stress affect people with cancer? And it really does affects, bottom line is coping. If
Coping
you're more,
skills.
if you're isolated, that's not good.
Right. And,
Because
you know, as we speak,
it really has a negative impact.
Totally. As we speak, and I want to get into this with you and how you relate it to your family. As we speak, I have a very, very dear friend of mine who is suffering from cancer, and as of today, his counts, I think, what are they called? Some level of
The cell count.
went down. But you know, it's such a tricky thing. Cancer's tricky because one day they're up, one day they're down. One day the person may feel that they're on top of the disease. The
white
other
blood cell count. You know,
right. The
is
other
high.
day they may feel that they're at the effect of this disease, and it's really kind of
It's really
bipolar.
It's
if you
very
will.
bipolar. Well,
Right.
there's an article, Hurry Up and Wait, because you know the torments of waiting. Because you're waiting for the doctor, you're waiting for the radiation, you're waiting for the delivery of the chemotherapy and the
Right.
drugs, you're
Right.
waiting for the infusion, you're waiting for the
Absolutely.
results, you're waiting for the biopsy,
Right.
you're waiting for surgery. You have
Constantly
this
waiting.
issue and you want it resolved. And
Yeah.
it's only going so fast, and half the time you're waiting for something.
So your friend, in some sense,
Yeah.
decided, I'm not waiting for anything. When my father was dying of cancer, he wrote in his journal that he feels that he's at this waiting station,
Yeah,
the train station.
exactly.
He's just waiting
yeah,
there.
and it's aggravating.
And my friend is waiting for what to do. Does he stay in this city where there's a lot of hospitals? Does he go back to his place where there, it's pretty remote, but just chilled out? And the bottom line is that, and I'll say it to him through this medium, is don't be alone. Be surrounded by
absolutely.
people.
Exactly.
And don't
Because-
think one person could take it on either.
No,
Because
we're not
this
an
is,
island.
it takes a village. I think in the case of
Absolutely.
cancer, it takes a small country.
Well, also it talks about in terms of the psychological stress, a sense of helplessness and hopelessness
Totally.
will actually increase the stress and can be overwhelming, and that will include and increase your ability to have cancer.
Yes.
Although I am going to have to put a plug here. I don't have any vested interest in it. There's a series out called The Truth About Cancer. It's on the internet. Just Google The Truth About Cancer. A guy named Ty Bollinger, who did a lot of research all over the world, excluding the United States,
Okay.
which just came out in October. It's a 12-part series on alternatives that might assist you in curing your cancer. The Truth About Cancer is what the series is called.
So years ago, as you know, I used to work with smokers,
Mm-hmm.
and that was at the point where they already had a fill of tar, and maybe the cells were already starting to go cancerous. Okay, so the best prevention, obviously, is not to smoke, not to drink, not to let the stress build up. So
Yes,
So-
you think?
you think, right? So so for those of you playing on what you just said with different alternative medicines, right? Wouldn't it be great if we just ate that way every day?
Well, that would mean
Right?
we wouldn't eat GMO food.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
when you smoke a pack of cigarettes, I think on the cigarettes it says, beware, causes death. You know?
Sure,
And even
sure.
though we know now they put arsenic in the cigarettes, I don't know if you're
Yeah,
aware
they
of
do.
that.
I remember
And it's
that's
like,
one of the ingredients.
Who wants to? I mean, there's poison in it, so it's just that
Yeah.
we've become so numb. Society's become so numb, and they're
Yes.
just like okay with putting
Yes.
poison in their bodies.
But that's that permeable membrane, right? Because our semi-permeable membrane gets violated. How? Because if we're violated in any sense of the word by our family of origin, if, God forbid, we're raped or beaten, or if we're violated verbally by being demeaned, devalued, destroyed, if we're ignored, okay? I know ignoring doesn't sound like a violation, but it's one of the most horrid things that you can do to a human being.
It's like
just
passive
to,
aggressiveness.
yeah, just ignore a person
know.
and disconnect, and you will you will understand if you're the one receiving the isolation of it and the cut off of it.
I've
It's
gone
very
through
painful.
That. Yeah,
If you're in a relationship with
Yeah,
somebody that treats you
yeah.
that way.
I mean, they go silent, and apparently, like, silence is like, silence is golden, but then silence can be
Like you
passive aggressive
dark.
because, you watch the human behavior and
Yes.
the actions, and I guess as well with when people find out they have cancer, for example, let's say you have your friend that's going through this and you want to offer him help,
Yeah.
and they just become really like, I'm fine, I've got this, I don't need your help. What do you do in that case? Because you know that they don't have it.
And
they.
It's amazing because the core belief of that person will pop out. So the core belief of I'm not important, I'm not worthy to be helped will
Well, I
come
was-
right up to the surface.
I have my own definition of
Yeah.
fine. I don't know if I've ever said this before. FINE, effed up, insecure, emotional, and neurotic. FINE.
I didn't know that was your definition. I
That's
like
my
it.
definition of fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm
no,
fine.
You're effed up, you're insecure, you're neurotic, and you're emotional.
So, part of what your friend did was he came to his moment where he just said, okay, let go, let God, whatever he did, I'm just going to enjoy. And people will come to that point, or maybe not at all. Some people will struggle
Right.
They don't.
till the
yeah,
end.
They don't let go. Yeah.
Right. Some people are researching as we speak ways to die because they don't want to. I mean, they want to be in charge. Like, if I'm going to
Well,
go, I don't want to.
It's on my terms. It's on
going to
my
be on
terms.
my terms, and it's
Absolutely.
when I say so. And I think there was
There's a
some
book.
kind
There's
of
a book. There's a
um,
book called Final Exit, Judy, that was out 20 years
Final
ago.
Exit.
Mhm.
Okay.
Basically, it was a recipes for finally exiting.
Right.
And a lot of people actually were successful in following that recipe to do it. It's
Oh,
just
yeah?
tragic. Yeah.
Okay.
If
I
you
mean,
didn't hear-
they're going to die anyway, right? I mean, they're going to die anyway, but they like, okay, I know I'm going to die, but I'm going to figure.
Yes, it's on my terms.
It's on my terms.
It's
But
on
just-
my terms, and
anger.
also let's take in consideration the pain. If somebody's in that
Yes.
kind of pain, right, it makes sense that they just like bye.
Yeah, they want
I
to do
wanna
whatever they can
go.
to relieve the pain.
It's kind of
Right.
the same with suicide. I mean, there's on another note. We have two friends that took their lives, and they seemed like the most positive. Young attorney in his 40s, and another guy 2 weeks later, just consecutively. And they just decided they've had enough, whether it was bills or emotional stress.
Sure,
But the kind of
sure.
stress they left behind for us
Right.
to clean up, because now the family members and everyone has to deal with the fact that
Right.
you took your life because stress became too much, or the stress of cancer, or whatever it may
Yes,
be, was too
yes.
much. You're still left with a backlash of cleaning up after the accident happened. And
Absolutely.
it's hard going
It's
in there.
very
Yes, it
Picking up
is.
the you're like,
Yes.
it's really heart-wrenching to go in there, and you're like,
Right.
my friend was alive a few days ago, now I've got to go in there. The whole thing is really disturbing.
Really.
Well, the
disturbing.
definition of suicide is a temporary solution. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And if you're just tuning into us, we are Dr. Judy WTF for What the Freud here at UBN Radio Network. You can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and we've got Dr. Judy Rosenberg and Coco Accom in the house, and I am your host, Walt Lusk. We are talking about cancer and how to deal with it as a cancer patient. And we're touching on the psychological aspects of it at the moment. And we've got one left, which is actually the best one, and that is how can people who have cancer learn to cope with the psychological stress? And the bottom line is several things. Train in relaxation and medication and stress management. Easier said than done, but it does work. Counseling and talk therapy. Cancer education, so you can get a little more informed about it. Social support. Again, we're not an island. We've talked a lot about that. Medications for depression and anxiety. And lastly, exercise.
If you can.
If you can.
Right.
If you can. It does make a difference.
And I think that there have also been studies to show that people who have a deeper spiritual connection and connect to higher power, source, God, also seem to derive a lot of relaxation, a lot of comfort from that. Ultimately, I think that whatever stresses us is going to bring out our curse by design, as I like to call it, our best and our worst and our struggles. And sometimes I notice that sometimes people start living when they're dying. Okay?
Wow, why is that, right?
Because at that point, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose, as Janis Joplin says, right? So then you just jump in and think, well, I've never done this. I've never told my dad that I love him. I've never told my son that he's the most special person to me in my life. I've never snorkeled in Hawaii. I'm still feeling pretty well, so I'll do that. And so WTF, right?
Exactly.
That's absolutely true. You might as well. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought with all the time left, we'd talk about cancer diagnoses, some tips into coping with it, since we're dealing with coping. The first one is to get the facts. You got to figure out what you've got, whether, what kind or where is it spread, or the tests and the procedures and whatnot. And again, I've added alternative treatments that might help. Second is keep the lines of communication open. We've talked about, having support, and it really is very important with loved ones, your doctors, and other family members. And if you and others express emotions honestly, you can all gain strength from each other.
Absolutely.
Anticipate possible physical changes, right? And now would be the time to figure that out, whether it be hair loss of weight. You might have to change your routines and your daily stuff. But again, it'd be
including your work,
including work,
right? The amount of hours that you can work,
and you educate people. Just because I have cancer doesn't mean I'm dead, or I can't work. I'm going to have my bad days, but that's the way it goes. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle is fourth. This can actually improve your energy level, and exercise if you can, and participating in enjoyable activities. Even something as simple as that will help you cope, and chances are you'll live longer.
So my last question, do we have a couple minutes?
We do.
Okay, I'm just wondering what you noticed with your family members, because the different people in your family had different core beliefs and different personality styles and so on. So as the cancer bore down on them, did you notice that they became more of the negative of who they are, more of the positive of who they are, a combination? What did you see happening?
I think my dad became more positive. He was a very sort of proud man, you know, and never needed anybody or anything. And I think when he was sort of on his last, he sort of made peace with a lot of, we all have family issues. So like my oldest brother and him, they started like making amends and chatting. Okay. Also, my youngest sister, she's sort of, her reckless lifestyle stopped. She's more sort of sensitive, compassionate, and actually cares about her well-being and what she eats and how she communicates, and the fact that, having an effect and how her actions affects our lives as well. So that's been kind of interesting, the dynamic, to see how she's been responding. It was my mom's birthday yesterday. My mom went to visit her, so she's like, oh, she took me out, we had a lovely day and all that. And I was like very surprised, because she's normally caught up in her own world, bit of a hypochondriac. So a lot of the behavior has changed, and they become more like, I guess, in tune with themselves. And then other family members, I don't know, as I've mentioned before, have become like Debbie Downers, wet blankets, just negative and thinking about negative things. So it's strange. You don't know how people are going to react. As Dr. Judy said, people they show their true, faces or characters when these things happen. You just don't know how people are going to reveal themselves. I've been shocked, and I'm surprised that I'm sort of the one that's also been trying to keep things together. When anything goes bad, I'll text and email everybody, and it's a 26-hour flight from home to here, so I can't just jump on a flight every day.
26 hours?
Yes,
Jeez.
and you stop over in London or Paris, but
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah, Mandela,
Right, I
you know.
keep thinking of
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I've seen huge changes, and I'm hoping for her that she continues and being positive and healthy, and because she was very insecure as well before, and a worry and all that, and I see now that she's I also come down on them a bit hard, because I'm all about setting boundaries about what you want and loving yourself and practicing self-love and all that. I think it really helps and is helping enhance her life and my mother as well. So
Well, that's fascinating that the impact overall in the family was positive. People really stepped up to the plate in some respects.
for the most part, yes, with my dad dying, and with my older sister, she passed away, but she separated herself from my family because they were kind of dysfunctional, and she was trying to live a very happy, functional life, but then she was a worry and a stressor. So when she died, the people that attended her funeral, she didn't want them to be there, and it's like, what do you make of it? It's just like it's like one of those British, four weddings and a funeral. I don't know. People show up and it's like, oh my God, that one's tipsy, or that one's talking crap, that one's living in the past. And my other sister's talking about when we're 5 years old, lives in the past and brings up all, wants to just be argumentative. So there's all these difficult people around, and Richard, and then a few of them are like really like remorseful, and they care and compassionate, and then the others are just like living in the past, and I think that's with every family, Christmas times or different holidays, people bring up certain things, and it's like, here we go again.
Be interesting if the person who's dying can have a funeral before that person's death, so that they can enjoy the food, right? They can kind of see what other people think.
Another party.
I think there's been a few movies like that, right?
Just right.
I just talked to Walt about that earlier, saying to him, David Bowie, like the song "Let's Dance" was one of his biggest hits. People loved it and all that. And I think the reason why he kept it quiet is he wanted to be known and remembered as this fabulous, outlandish rock star from London, And I said to him, when I die, I want people to have a yacht party, drink champagne, and have a ball, because I'm just a ball of energy, positive. So I don't want people crying, going, oh my God, no. It's like, you should celebrate life, because I live life each day as if I'm going to die, so I don't have regrets, We're not perfect, we're imperfect people, but we strive every day to be stronger and more positive and to impact other people's lives. So, for me, it's just, just a smile,
That's why they call it a present, because it's a present every day.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I just wanted to say one more thing. Speaking of multi-generational, right? That we want to leave something
a legacy,
for the next generation. Yeah.
Your footprint. That's what I'm all about.
And one of the things about coping, as we mentioned here, is family. Let friends and family help you. Now is the time they want to help you. Make them feel important. And we're going to talk about this next week, but it affects the diagnosis with cancer affects the entire family, adds stress, especially the primary caregiver, which we're going to talk about next week. With meals, chores from neighbors and friends go a long way of preventing caregiver burnout.
Right.
Absolutely. And I guess also being open to information, because if someone shuts off and doesn't want information and they just want to sit and die in a dark room, where does that leave you? It's a tough one. But I guess in your next segment you'll touch on those subjects. But to me, it's just sometimes people can be really hard-headed and stubborn.
Yes.
And how do you get through to them? Do you just keep going and keep going? I want to help you. I'm here for you. And they're like, keep shutting the door.
They can't take it in. It's again that negative core belief. I don't deserve to be loved. I don't deserve your help. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable.
Not important.
And that goes right down into the depth of them and shows up even on their deathbed.
And one of the things that to overcome that is one of the suggestions is talk to other people with cancer. Get their perspective. They're further down the road probably than you are, and they'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly and say, hey, someone's going to help you, jump on it. You're going to need it.
I think that if, like, for example, with Dr. Judy, she's friends with someone that's going through the same thing. So if she perhaps introduces him to someone or says to him, I found a great support group or this type of person, that would help as well, because they might not have the mental capacity to take it upon themselves and go, I'm going to go out there and be Superman and go and find cures, and I'm going to, find these groups of people. So we have to also do our part and assist and help and advise as much as we can.
One thing I do observe about him is that when he's being the light, when he's helping other people, I sense that his vitality increases. So if I'll say to him, I really need your thought on something, I really need your help with something, he'll just jump right in. So I think that people who have purpose fight for life, and people who are hopeless and feel that they're not of value to other human beings, I think they give up. So that's a huge part of dealing with cancer, is to find your life purpose, even if it's as simple as find somebody else who's in worse shape and help that person.
That's how it works. You give, and as a result, you get a much more back.
Right.
And I think that's a great segment for our song. We're going to do our segment now, Shrink That Tune, where those of you who listen, we take a popular song and we're going to read the lyrics. And this one is one of David Bowie's last songs. It's on his last album. It just came out this week. And this one's entitled Lazarus. And so I'm going to read the lyrics and we're going to go for it. And Coco, chime in. Look up here. I'm in heaven. I've got scars that can't be seen. I've got drama, can't be stolen. Everybody knows me now.
Well, I picked this song because he is in heaven now,
Yes.
and he's got scars, and because he was so famous, people idealized him. So I think that whenever you're in that level of limelight, people think that you're flawless, and now that he's able to just say, look, I'm human, I've got scars.
I also think David Bowie was an incredibly good-looking man. He was
was
very
a-
metrosexual,
Yes, he was.
good-looking man. So, he looked like he could be a Vogue catwalk model. And I think when, this world we live in, showbiz, everything's very, aesthetic. So people judge you from your outside appearance. But I guess he was also saying, I'm hurting on the inside and I have
That's right.
scars internally.
Yeah, I'm beautiful, but
Exactly,
inside,
yeah.
not so
Yeah, he
pretty.
was one of the
Right.
original models in that regard.
Oh,
Look up here, man. I'm in danger. I've got nothing left to lose. I'm so high it makes my brain whirl. Dropped my cell phone down below. Ain't that just like me?
So it's interesting because he says, look up here, which is like the idealized, look at me, I'm a star too. But he's also saying, I'm in danger, because he's writing this right at the end of his life, isn't he? So there's that sentence, like, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. But he did take his freedom, because David Bowie was a very risky
Yes, he did.
artist.
He did. Yeah, he did.
So I'm so high it makes my brain whirl. So when you enter that other zone, right, at some point you're elevating, you're getting closer to source. And so he dropped his cell phone down below. To me, that means that he's disconnecting.
Yep, communication.
He's disconnecting
Right.
from the earth and from people, and his ascendance is toward heaven, toward up.
Yeah, I have a different interpretation of that. I'm
Go
an
ahead.
I'm an artist. But I've never
Go.
I've never taken drugs, and I've never been super reckless. But I think that passage, that verse he wrote there, could have been when he just sort of discovered, okay, I'm dying here. I've got the news. And obviously, cancer patients, they get, medical marijuana cards. So by then,
okay, I'm so high.
I'm thinking that he probably did. He was smoking marijuana, and to help with the pain and
Right.
the suffering that he was going through. And at that point, he may have been so high, where he actually may have been lying on a bench, dropped his cell phone, and he's like, "I'm so high." And in that moment, it's probably when he started writing this song. I'm just guessing. So I write, and I'm just thinking he was probably literally high,
Literally
in pain,
high.
thinking, "I've been diagnosed. I'm dying, but I'm in heaven."
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so high it makes my brain whirl.
Exactimo.
Okay, there it is. Well, moving on. By the time I got to New York, I was living like a king. Then I used up all my money. I was looking for your ass.
So I think that now he's reminiscing about his good times on Earth. Okay, so obviously he did live like a king, and
Yes,
he used
indeed.
up all his money. But what was he really looking for back in the day? Drugs, sex, and rock and roll. He's
Right.
looking for your ass, right? 'Cause
Yeah, he was after
That was
something.
his drug,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
sex.
Yeah, well, he was a very eccentric man, let's just say
Yes.
that. And so, he wanted to go and have a good time, and perhaps he just want to have
Absolutely.
one last good time.
One less
Yeah.
piece of ass.
I don't know about that, but just I guess New York is is a stomping ground apart from London. I think people love New York.
Lots of
certain- yeah.
stimulation.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a very eclectic music scene happening in New York. So, and people are less judgmental. They're just eccentric, and I mean Lenny Kravitz is from there. A lot of huge stars are from there, and they just have that. New York's got that thing, the Big Apple.
The Big Apple. There, this way or no way, I'll be free, just like that bluebird. Now ain't that just like me?
And he was so individual. He was so courageous in his artistic, and that's who he was. He was a free man.
Yes.
He broke all boundaries. He
Yes, he
really
did.
experimented.
He did.
Yeah.
It sounded to me that passages where he had a battle with medication, whether he was going to go the herbal route like Steve Jobs or the other route, because it said this way or no way. And I think he probably made a conscious psychological decision saying, I'm going to do it this way. And I could be wrong. Imam would know one day.
There's
on the
no
chat.
right
Yeah,
way to
there's one.
interpret, but this way or no way. What did you mean that this way?
Yeah.
Like I have to choose a pathway.
Exactly,
now,
and
right?
he probably just did his own thing, and he was like kept it quiet because he went really fast. So he probably took that whole holistic route. I don't know.
Well, he had about 6 heart attacks while he was doing his last album. I mean, he really, really, really wanted to get this finished before he expired.
That is so hard. It just breaks my heart to hear about
Yes.
it. I was just such a huge fan of his. I even did a photo shoot inspired by him. Wow. I'm still shocked, because he was doing so many things the past 6 months, year.
Yes,
Ago,
one of the last
just-
photos of him on his birthday, which I believe was the 8th or something, or 6th
Yes.
of January, is he's walking and he's got in this amazing suit and he's got this gigantic smile on his face.
But now that you put it that way, this way or no way, he was driven. He was going to finish this album,
Yes,
right?
he was
Even
gonna-
if
No
it
matter
took
what.
6 heart attacks,
even if it killed him.
this way. So now, ain't that just like me? So driven, ain't that
Yes.
just like
I
him?
love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In the last stanza, oh, I'll be free. It's just like that bluebird. Oh, I'll be free. Ain't that just like me? So that's Lazarus from the album Lazarus by David Bowie, which is his last album and the most recent one that just came out.
Do you know how the album's doing at the moment?
I don't know how it's doing, but I understand it's doing very well. I mean, we're going to play the song here, and you can hear it. It's probably more Bowie than some of his other albums, songs of late.
It's going to be doing really well because everyone will want to hear his
Absolutely.
last piece of
Yeah.
work.
Yes, indeed.
So
It
that goes
yeah.
without saying.
It
right?
sounds like you wrote a really great record, really intense, very much like, taking it back to like Bob Dylan when they wrote real lyrics that mattered and it wasn't just all about the bling and, the glitz and the glam, but this sounded like it was really heartfelt, came from his heart, and the man was like on his last. I can't believe that
Yes.
he finished it.
Yes, he did.
Props to
Yeah,
David Bowie.
and it was a
man.
really interesting. If you look at the video on YouTube, it's very interesting. Have you seen the video, Coco? It's
have
very
not yet.
interesting.
I
Yeah,
will look at
it's
it
it's
tonight.
Bowie.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So that's our show and that's our song. You've been tuned into Dr. Judy WTF, which of course is What the Freud. I'm your host Walt Lusk and Dr. Judy Rosenberg and Coco Accom, and we've been dealing with cancer, and we are going to close out the show with one of David Bowie's last songs he wrote, who of course this week died of cancer.
I just would like to say one thing. Our hearts go out to Imam, David Bowie's family.
Absolutely.
Dr. Judy and I and Walt want to send us
Absolutely.
deepest sympathies for the family
Absolutely.
and everyone out there, that he's always going to be remembered by us, and that we really, I'm so
He made a
happy that
profound
he's
impact on
impacted my
yeah.
life as a musician, and that
As a performer.
All of
just
us. because
he's gone physically doesn't mean that we're going to forget about him, because I think his legacy is going to live on for generations to come. So thank you so much.
And Coco, what is
Thank
you have a website? So if people want to know more about you, what's your
My
website?
website's cocoaccom, COCOACCOM. That's COCOACCOM.com. And I have Twitter, Instagram, so please follow me and stay tuned for my updates for my next show, Lifestyle with Coco. about lifestyles of the rich and famous, and very inspirational. So thank you so much for your support, and thank you, Dr. Judy, for having me on your show
it's
tonight.
been a pleasure. Thank you so much
Fabulous.
for coming on, and you're going to be one of the hosts on UBN Radio.
Absolutely,
yes?
yeah.
I'm really
So
excited about
stay
that.
tuned,
Welcome.
folks. Stay
Thanks so
tuned.
much. Thanks
Until
so
next
much.
time, God bless.